even as we speak, at 6 minutes past 11 o'clock. So many Newcastle fans, almost all of them, are thinking, yeah, but he's bound to be gone by this weekend when they take on Tottenham. Or is he? What's your take?
I mean, listen, I'm very loath to say anything, given I'm the person that said that the deal was deader than the dead thing from Deadland last night. Of course, I was talking about the fact that they wouldn't get it through on the basis of CAT and arbitration hearings and didn't see the piracy fall on the sword by the Saudis. Look, certain segments of the media, I would imagine, are being briefed in about what's going to happen to Steve Bruce, and we're all jumping to conclusions because the logical assumption is, and speaking from somebody that can speak about owning a football club and taking over a football club, new brooms do tend to sweep clean. So I do believe that sooner rather than later, there's a distinct possibility that Steve Bruce will no longer be the manager of Newcastle United. How that manifests itself and the bun fight to get to that point is, of course, the discussion that's going on right now. I was of the understanding, specifically and explicitly, that Newcastle fans' main motivation was to make sure that they were rid of Mike Ashley.
Yeah.
So they've gotten rid of Mike Ashley one way or t'other.
Right.
Now, of course, you could argue who's making the decision. You know, this ridiculous nonsense that somehow the Saudi state doesn't own the football club because they've given assumptions. I would imagine that Amanda, with due respect, the minister without portfolio, probably has to refer to somebody else to be able to make decisions about who manages Newcastle United. And I would anticipate, but not double down on, because I've made that mistake once before, that Steve Bruce will still be in situ on Sunday, not because it's his 1,000th game, but because people need to get the lay of the land. And bringing in a manager now, at this stage, when you're finding your feet, you're communicating with the ultimate owners, and making decisions that will be for the long-term benefit of the football club, you're going to have to take a little bit of time to do that. And I genuinely believe that this situation with the Saudis falling on their swords about piracy came on so fast that even the people that are supposedly running this football club, which I maintain won't be, it'll be the Saudi state that are running this football club, and Mohammed bin Salman and the owner of the ultimate PIF fund that will be making the decisions, are going to collect their poise. There could be an argument that some of the lustre might be taken off because obviously the Newcastle fans are ecstatic, and the atmosphere inside the stadium on Sunday I think will be absolutely electric. And there could be an argument, and I'm sure Steve would understand that himself, that he might be the party pooper by still being in the dugouts. But surely the bigger picture prevails. You've got rid of the arch enemy. Mike Ashley was what you wanted rid of, and when these guys are ready to make a decision about who could be the next manager and who that manager looks like, because it's going to be a very, very difficult job, because the expectation is going to go through the ceiling. Most sensible Newcastle fans understand that irrespective of how much wealth may be available, it's going to take some time to build this football club up to be an elite football club.
Of course.
So the next guy coming in almost has this sort of David Moyes feel about it, taking over at Manchester United, because he's going to walk through the door with this ridiculous expectation from a certain section of the fans that all of a sudden you're going to like the blue touch paper. Most sensible Newcastle fans will understand they are at this moment in time in the relegation zone. They need to make sure they get out of the relegation zone, because the last thing, as hilarious as it might be to Sunderland fans watching from the sidelines and Middlesbrough fans, what Newcastle want is to get relegated under this new ownership.
Of course.
So they need to make a very sensible decision. And if in the short term, Steve Bruce, despite the protestations and the claim for revolution, is still in the dugout on Sunday, it's irrelevant, isn't it? It's about what they can do in January, because they can't do a thing between now and January.
But nonetheless, it is time for clarity, isn't it?
Well,
by that I'm meaning a holding statement from the new owners.
We're assuming and assume there's an element of understanding without breaching confidence, that certain people are briefing in the press about who's going to be here and who's going to be there, and the assumption has been leapt to that Steve Bruce is a dead man walking because that's the given.
Yeah.
We've not heard from the owners, whoever they may be,
that's right,
and their representation, about who's going to take that decision. They may well come out and back Steve Bruce. They may come out and say, because if I'm Steve Bruce, I'd want one of two things: back me or fire me. Back me or fire me. And if you've had your conversations on Monday, it's now Wednesday, I'm pretty sure that people that are running the football club can make decisions in that space of time, because having been in that situation myself, I know how long it takes to make a decision if I'm running the football club.
Right. And all the while, Trevor, we know that the backdrop is nobody can add to Newcastle's ranks. They can't bring anybody in until the end of January.
Exactly. And I think when you look at a Newcastle team, if Callum Wilson's available, if Miguel Almiron's available, and if St. Maximum is available,
they're good enough for that.
They'll compete against most teams outside the top six. If they're not available, and you're looking at the likes of Joe Linton, Andy Carroll, Dwight Gale coming in to fill them positions, But I'm talking from last season. We only had 7 games
but
this
4
season.
days from the Tottenham
They got
game,
Joe Willock
Trevor.
as well, don't forget.
That's midfielder, though.
Is it
Yeah,
fair
10.
that Bruce is still in limbo land?
I think Bruce
And he is.
Listen, Bruce is on 999 games that he's managed. He is professional. What he'll do is, if he hears nothing, he'll go to training, he'll coach the lads, he'll prepare them properly to make sure they've got every chance of getting a result against Tottenham at the weekend. Simple as. He will just get on with it. But like Simon said, I think it is if you just get left hanging there for, I think this week, it's all happened so quickly. If you get left this week, maybe another week. After that, he's going to want clarity. Is he staying to do a job,
he will.
or is he going to get
At
fired?
any point, because we've heard Manda, she's a town crier. At any point, has she ever given us any indication that Steve Bruce was going to be fired? That's been joined up by media briefing, media assumptions, and someone like me that's owned a football club knowing that new brooms tend to sweep clean.
But I don't see the point, Simon, because like you just mentioned there, they can't bring anybody in until January. So whilst they've got this group of players, they've got a manager that knows how to manage them.
It depends, because it is also the flip side of it. You know, as a player,
Yeah.
if you're dead man walking as a manager, players are going to take the right roll Mickey out of you. I don't mean Mickey in terms of ridicule you. They're going to take liberties with you because they
I'm
know.
not sure that's the case. Because
hang on.
if the new manager coming in,
But your authority is completely diminished.
the
If
new
you're
manager,
dead man walking,
if
your
the new
authority is diminished.
in this particular case, I feel the new manager coming in will be looking at things from now. Or as soon as he knows.
Granted.
So he might be
Granted.
given 2 months.
But we're talking
So if
about
you start downing
about
tools
if Steve Bruce stays there.
But if you start downing tools, downing tools in training, you're not going to play. If you start downing tools in games, the new manager that's going to come in is going to see that.
Correct. But if we're talking about where Steve Bruce sits in the great discussion,
exactly.
and the discussion is, does his authority get diminished unless somebody comes out and makes an unequivocal statement? If they make an unequivocal statement, here's what's going to happen to them. If they support Steve Bruce, some of the tarnish is going to come off. And given the fact they're playing to the gallery right now, and every reason to do so because they've got a vast amount of wealth behind them and Newcastle fans are going to be so excited, the Bruce factor is a negative factor that you don't need because from what I understand, whether this is right or wrong, a significant proportion of Newcastle fans simply don't want Steve Bruce.
Yeah, I understand that.
So if you're the owners of Newcastle and you now have a popularity count off the Richter
But
scale,
it depends whether you're into
gonna take a change.
popularity or you're into results, and you're into doing things
If
properly.
you're running around
For
in front
me,
of
if
cameras, you're into popularity as well.
well, popularity shouldn't come into it because if you want to get results,
Well, it does.
Well, it shouldn't.
It does.
It shouldn't come into it if you're talking about pure football matters.
Where
because
do-
Steve knows
where-
the best.
where do we stand right now?
players
Yes,
at
But
that
the
team.
argument, you can say that, but against Steve here, they've played 7 games, they haven't won a game. They're sitting second to the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
You can argue the fact that whatever he does or doesn't know, he ain't getting it from these players. So you could say that irrespective of whether you can change it or not, a different voice in the dressing room, and it is not Graham Jones, by the way, because Graham Jones made an absolute horlicks of managing Luton. So I don't think as a manager he's your solution. He's
Everybody
a great
wants
coach.
Graham Jones.
Well,
He's one of the most respected coaches in the game. That's why Southgate took him to
with
England in the
respect, Jim,
summer.
With respect, Jim, having employed
That's why Newcastle brought him in.
having employed coaches and managers, there is a polar difference between a coach and a manager.
Could anyone have made a success at Luton? You've got to ask yourself that as well. Good, did he
Well,
do
yeah,
his
the guy
best?
that's
Yeah,
in there
no
now
doubt.
doing great things that came back to them and made a success of them before.
The
at
bottom
level.
line is this. Will Bruce
a coach.
probably
I would think so.
be in charge on Sunday, but would his 1,000th game be his last game in charge of Newcastle?
Well,
That's what you think, because they've got now a decent amount of time to get whoever it is in
Well, it
place.
depends who they want to get in.
Depends. I don't
If
think
they're available.
Who are you going to get? Antonio Conte, from what I understand, it's another briefing into the media, is not even interested in looking at Newcastle, right? Because that was one that was being linked.
The popular
Frank
consensus
Lampard-
is that Lampard leads
well,
away.
you know, good luck to Frank. That will be that will be the end of his managerial career. I think if he takes that particular challenge on, because I don't think he's ready for it, or the expectation, or the fact he's working with the blind leading the blind. These guys, with respect, are going to find some real challenges. There's people are sitting on the sidelines now, waiting for Amanda and David Bick and whoever else they've got in there, and the agents must be sitting there with their eyes spinning about the opportunities that are going to come their way.
Of course they are.
And it's going to be an interesting time. But the answer to the question is, I would, if I was weighing it on a probability, I would suggest that Steve will be in charge on Sunday. But the football moves so quickly. Nobody, not even people that are plugged in, saw the Saudis falling on their sword last week over piracy. All this nonsense about separation, it's nonsense about piracy, and the Saudis pulled the plug on the piracy in Saudi Arabia, and bang, you've now got a situation where they're in a club. And I think it happened so quickly that I think people aren't prepared for it. But the one thing that Newcastle fans can be prepared for is a fabulous atmosphere on Sunday. You've got rid of the devil incarnate, and you are on a journey now. And that journey can only be in an upward trajectory because you've got the wealth to be able to compete with those in the Premier League and build a side that will represent, hopefully, the good things in football, rather than perhaps the ghastly ownership that really owns it behind.
Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.